Does your life ever feel like a suit that doesn't quite fit properly? Do you ever wonder why, no matter how hard you work, how closely you follow the advice and the tried and trusted steps that convention says you should follow, you never seem to get where you want to be? Well, the chances are the life you're living is out of alignment with who you really are. I'm Chris Brock, and this is Conversations on Living, a podcast about how to be well, do well, and live well. Think of this podcast like a door, and I'm here with my guests to show it to you, and maybe even open it for you. But it's up to you to walk through. Today's door handle turner is Sam Thiara. Sam teaches at the Simon Fraser University in Vancouver, and he's the author of Lost and Found, his personal story about retracing his grandfather's life and discovering himself along the way. His message is that once you dig down and find out who you really are, you can start to live a fulfilling and rewarding life that is in alignment with your values. Like the Stoics, he believes that the route to success is signposted with obstacles, and that this will lead us where we need to go for a happy life. And if we keep asking ourselves why, then we'll get to the truth of who we came here to be. You can find out more about Sam, his ideas, his writings, and his book at his website, which is sam-thiara.com. That's sam-thiara.com. But before we get started, I just want to give a quick shout out to the guys at Headliner. I mention them every week, and that's because they support this podcast with their service, and it's a service I use to make audiograms, which are those little social media sized graphics with moving waveforms or captions that a lot of podcasts use to advertise and market their episodes. I use it because it's the most powerful and straightforward way to create audiograms, and if you're a podcast host as well, you should really think about giving it a go. That's Headliner, which is at www.headliner.app. And a quick word about Plane. This is a video game created by a friend of the show, Krish Srikumar. In the game, you are challenged to create a forest and nurture an island full of beautiful plants, trees, with your animal companions while you're doing it. And the aim of the game is to develop skills in mindfulness and build up positive habits around simple meditations and deep relaxation techniques and that sort of thing. It's great. It's a great way to get into mindfulness and meditation. And if video games are your cup of tea, then it's definitely worth checking out. So that's Plane, Playne, at www.plane.co. And finally, just a quick request from me to rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast, and also tell the world, because it all helps to spread the love. So tell your neighbours, tell your partners, tell your friends, tell your pets, tell everyone you can find. Shout it from the windows, put flyers through people's letterboxes, whatever it takes. Just let everyone know about Conversations on Living, because it all helps us to get traction, invite new guests, good guests, and to spread the word about what we're trying to do, which is all about empowering ourselves and equipping ourselves with the tools to live a life of our own, that take ownership of our situation, and to really fulfill and live up to our potential. So, tell the world. And you can also find out, more about this podcast, other episodes, wherever you get your podcasts, and also at the website. That's conversationsonliving.com. And while you're there, you can check out my writing, my 21-day gratitude challenge. I've got some meditations on there. And if you sign up for my newsletter as well, you will get a lovely free treat to download. And don't forget, you can also continue the conversation in our Facebook group, which is Conversations on Living. So check it out, sign up, and join the conversation. Anyway, that's enough about that. Time now to get into my conversation with the fantastic Sam Thiara. So Sam Thiara, thank you for coming on my podcast. So you're an Englishman originally, but then you ended up in Vancouver in Canada, and you teach at the Simon Fraser University in Vancouver. And you have a lot of interesting ideas. I mean, you left university, you became a janitor, you've been rejected by job after job after job. So kind of school of life, University of Hard Knocks, if you like. And I've kind of had similar bumps along my journey as well, and just like you, I think those are the kind of most valuable lessons that we can learn, and they give us a great deal of insight. And you've kind of modeled this insight into a kind of I don't want to say formula for living or anything like that, but it kind of led you to a TED talk, or a TEDx talk, where you talked about discovering the extraordinary in the ordinary, which for me sounds a lot like kind of mindfulness and being present and all that kind of stuff. But before I ramble on any longer, maybe I should hand over the kind of microphone to you so you can talk a little bit about your story and how you got to where you are today.
Thanks, Chris. And I really do look forward to being able to share some insights. And yeah, no, it's one of those. I think the best quote I can say that I live by is, obstacles are the necessary bricks on a road to success. We fear those obstacles, but what we don't realize, those obstacles are the way that will guide us to where we need to go. So don't fear those obstacles, embrace them. And to your point, it's true. Like, I graduated from university with this mindset of who's lucky to get me, because I have a degree in business and political science. And you start applying for jobs, and, that's what we traditionally would be doing. And, who's lucky to get me? And I remember at graduation saying, okay, this is what I have to do. And I wound up going home and I sent out 12 letters to prospective employers, who's lucky to get me. And after 2 weeks, a letter arrived, and it just basically said, I'm sorry, we don't have a job for you, but good luck. And I thought, well, that's all right. I mean, you're not lucky, but I've got 11 letters out there, and someone else is going to be lucky. And but you know what? I'm going to send 3 more letters out. Well, Chris, it became like the tide. The more letters I sent out, the more rejections. And I wound up with 86 rejection letters, and I still hold on to them. And it's literally the size of a brick and weighs about as much as a brick. And this is what I carried with me. But that's where you're correct. I mean, my first job was being a janitor, emptying emptying rubbish bins, mopping floors. But again, I went into that job with a mindset. Instead of looking at it as the obvious, I looked at it from a different perspective of, this isn't my last stop. What am I going to learn here? And there were 3 valuable life lessons that I want to share with your audience. The first life lesson I learned, my father said, I don't care what you do, just do the best job possible, because your reputation's on the line. And that's what I did. There was no rubbish bin left full, and the floors were absolutely spotless. But I carry that with me to who I am today. In anything that I do, has to have that care and quality. The second valuable lesson, there were times I would get on the elevator with nurses, doctors, and administrators, and you were ignored because you're not a professional. I know what it feels like to be ignored, or a sense and feeling of insignificance. This is why I talk to everybody. This is why I want everyone to share with me their story of who they are. And the third valuable lesson is, rather than looking at any situation from an obvious and absolute lens, let's look at it from the standpoint of, in anything that we embrace or we do, there are lessons, good or bad, but there are lessons to be had. And that mentality has carried me forward. So I'm always going through life with my lens open, my radar on, and embracing these experiences and looking at it from a much more deeper perspective. And it's guided me to a point in many years later, when everything sort of resolved. I was in a corporate job. That job didn't fit. It felt like a suit that just didn't fit me. And I looked around, and there were many people wearing suits that didn't fit them, which was their career. The moment I stopped thinking about what I was doing and shifted to who I am, clarity emerged. And that's what's really guided me beyond to where I am today. And I'm guided by 5 things in life that carries me. But it was all this conversation about who I am versus what am I going to do that really laid that foundation and clarity to get me where I am today.
That's interesting. I mean, this really resonates very much with my own experiences, and also what this podcast is very much about. There's a kind of, with my own experiences, I've had kind of career highs where I've been working in New York as a magazine editor, but also career lows where I've been quite fed up. I've been working as a van driver, or working as a carer for disabled people. Yet it's those career lows that I kind of I'm the most fond of. And I think I've learned the most from those. But also the tagline for this podcast is kind of very informally, being well, doing well, and living well.
Mm.
And it's, by just being as positive, well, not necessarily positive, but by being kind of the epitome of what we stand for, and by acting in that way and by doing that, then we get to live a more fulfilled life rather than chasing one of our, onto whatever those dreams are. So, I mean, what did this kind of materialize as? You kind of, you came with these ideas, and how did this manifest into your life? How did that reveal itself to you?
Yeah, because it was self created, because that's where I was looking at what my job was and realizing it just didn't fit it. What I could do the job, it's not me. But then I had to ask myself, well, but what is me? And then I started doing some self-reflection and introspection, and I started shifting from what to who am I? So not what am I going to do or what am I doing, to who am I? And I said, what are the 5 things that I'm not willing to compromise, that are going to be really important to me in life and career, not just career, but life and career? And I started asking myself these deeper questions, and I came up with 5 things which have changed over time. So the 5 things that guide and direct me in life right now: servant leadership, story sharing, activator igniter, champion enabler, and community do-gooder. Now, back then, those were 5 different words, related and similar. But Chris, when I sat down and I came up with those 5 things, it made me realize with clarity I was in the wrong job. And then it helped guide me to, okay, if it's not the right job, what might be the right job? And I looked at, opportunities that were within the corporation. And one area came up, which was that popped in my mind, was road safety. And I realized road safety closely aligned to those 5 things that were really important to me. Now, the part that's really interesting is the noise around me said, it's not going to materialize because you don't have any skills in that area. But it meant more to me to pursue this. And I started going down this pathway, gaining some experience, volunteering, trying to absorb and gain as much as I could. And it wasn't difficult because it aligned to the 5 things that were really important to me. And 14 months later, here I am in that job that everyone said you could not get, because you know what? It was authentic to me. And this is what I then share with other people is, let's talk about what are the 5 things you're not willing to compromise in life and career. Now, the way we go about doing this when I have my sessions with people is I'll say, okay, tell me about your current job and previous jobs. What did you like about the various aspects of it, but what did you not like about it? But for each of those, tell me why. Why did you like it? Why did you not like whatever? What about when you were in school? Which classes did you really enjoy and which ones did you not enjoy? But why? And what do you like to do in your social and spare time? Why? And we go through a process of, again, self-reflection, introspection. And next thing you know, people start coming up with these words. So I'll give you an example. So many times when I do this exercise, the first word people will tell me is family. Family is so important to me. I said, okay, why is family important? And then they go into depth, and they might talk about the connections they have or the relationships, with their immediate family, the extended family, even extending to their friends. I said, okay, so you've used the words relationships and connectedness. Does that impact you? And is that important to you in the workplace? And they're like, yeah, absolutely. What about when you were in school? Were relationships and connections important? And they're like, oh, for sure. What about social life? Is that important? And they're like, oh, yeah. So I'm like, okay, can we replace family with relationships and connectedness as one of your center points? So now what happens is we go through and we come up with 4 more. But now you've started to build this foundation so that you can now compare it with what you're doing presently. And does it hit 1 out of 5, 4 out of 5? How many does it hit? And if it's missing, let's say you hit 2 out of 5, can you incorporate the other 3 into your present job? If the answer is no, can you incorporate those 3 that are missing outside of your work? And if the answer is no, maybe we then need to say, okay, where do you need to go? And it's not like I'm saying today we make a decision that, okay, Chris, you're not in the right position. Tomorrow, hand in your resignation, let's move on. No, let's start building a plan, a platform, and a way to get you where you can now build more of these core elements, as I call them, into your life. Now, the fear people have is, I'm making you pick 5 things. What if they're not the right words? What if I'm in the wrong direction? I'm like, you start from a base point. And as you go through life and career, change the words to better reflect as you grow as an individual. I mean, to build a house, we need a solid foundation. To build a life, we need a solid foundation. I mean, we pay someone to come and check the foundation of the house to make sure it's secure. When have we checked the foundation of ourselves? But that's the process that we go through.
That's fascinating, because I know I've talked a lot on this podcast about, when we're living a life that is aligned with who we are, then we live a much more fulfilled existence. We're able to reach greater heights, and life rewards us in different ways. We're much more satisfied.
Absolutely.
But half the time we don't actually know who we are in order to choose the kind of things that we're aligned to. We know things that we're kind of roughly interested in, but this kind of exploration of the why in every aspect. Every aspect. Why did you enjoy these things? Why were these things important to you? It's actually opening a window into kind of who we are a little bit. That it might be a little bit daunting to people who have done what they should have done. They followed the kind of the guide, the route maps that they've been given from school onwards. They've done what they were told to do. Do you get much resistance from people when you're having these conversations?
It starts out with a little bit of resistance because people are fearful of change. But what happens though is, especially a lot of times I'm speaking with anywhere from 15 to 40-year-olds. That's a big chunk of the people that I engage with. So they're starting off quite early in their career, especially when I teach at university. I mean, I'm incorporating a lot of this in to give them the tools so that they can then project as they move forward, with the understanding that by doing this exercise, you're not going to jump into this opportunity that is the epitome of and a euphoric moment of like, this is exactly what I meant to do. But it gives you the tools to start moving forward. But equally, for people that are in careers, it's the same thing. Like, they may be hesitant or resistant. I mean, think of it as, continuance commitment. Like, I mean, I've got to pay the mortgage, the kids are in school and all of that. I don't know if I can leave my position. But I'm also talking about fulfillment outside of the work environment as well. So make it more holistic. It's, people may be resistant to it, but when you start asking about what really matters to you, I also see that they start focusing and thinking about, yeah, you know what? Okay, how? And I think one of the things that's really important is to realize you may not be in this by yourself. Talk to trusted people. Hire a coach. I mean, a coach is there to support you. I mean, for myself, I mentor and coach. I've had about 5,000 conversations to date. And it's always so funny, Chris, people come to me, they see me as a orange saffron bearded man sitting on top of a mountain who's going to tell them exactly what they need to do. And that's what they want. I call myself the difficult monk because the answers you need lie within you. My job is to just ask you questions, and then you will discover your journey and pathway. But I'm here to support and guide you. I think one of the most important things about this, as what you're talking about, is realize that, you're not doing this by yourself. find the people that are champions and enablers who are there to support you, the people who see possibilities and opportunities, not the challenges and obstacles. So bring those people within you. If you don't have anyone that you can work with, there's a lot of coaches out there that can provide that support. And what they do is they actually make it so that they provide you the tools and, you know, the map that helps you get where you need to go.
It's very difficult, isn't it? Because often the people we are surrounded by, our friends, our family, they're quite comfortable with us being where we are. And so they will subconsciously maybe prevent us from, you know, stepping out of our comfort zone. They might just say little things that might undermine us. And then, you know, we say, oh, I'm thinking about doing this, or I'm thinking about changing something in my life. And they'll sort of say, oh, are you sure about that? And suddenly you're thinking, you know, maybe
that's the noise.
Right, you know.
I call that noise.
I know, and it's very difficult because we're constantly seeking validation and approval from the people we respect and the people we look to. So it takes a lot of courage, doesn't it, to step out of that and seek kind of someone else to, you know, support us, or even to go it alone. Yeah. Where do we find that courage?
Oh, definitely. There are champions and enablers out there. The people who aren't the noise. They activate the voice within to be louder than the noise around you. And it's not to say that you're disrespecting the people around you. I mean, people may provide their insights, because if you don't know the direction you want to go, people are going to help determine what that will be, especially if you're younger. And the champions enablers are those who are there to guide and support you along the way. I'll give you an example. So I had someone who came to me and they said, you know, they wanted to be an author, a writer. And, you know, they said, you know, they were so enthusiastic because they just got admitted into university and they got into the writing program and they were so thrilled. And that was in a September month. By November, they came to me and said, you know what, I think I'm going to leave the writing program and pick something else. And I said, but this is something you've always talked about. And we've talked about it. And this is really important. Well, why? And they said, yeah, but I can't make money at this. And I said, okay, number one, well, who said you can't make money at this? And when they told me, I said, does this person know anything about the writing industry? And they're like, actually, no. And I said, why are you listening to them? I can put you in touch. I mean, I'm an author, but don't listen to me. I will put you in touch with people in the writing industry. Second point is, money is not a motivator. Money is a result of your motivation. So let's put that aside, because if you pursue it for money, you're only going to accomplish a certain level, but you're not going to reach your pinnacle best, because it's just not that authentic, because it's all about the money. And the third thing I suggested is, but when you're talking about writing or being an author, or, you know, that writing industry, are you talking about fiction writing, nonfiction writing, corporate writing, publishing, editing, intranet? And I went on, and they were like, I didn't realize the space was that big. So oftentimes, like I said, and to your point, Chris, there's a lot of noise out there. So how do we activate the voice within to be louder than the noise around? And part of it is those champions, enablers, the coaches, the mentors, the people who are there to support you in this journey. The other part of it is that there are situations where people might be hesitant because parents might say, well, yeah, that's not a good place. You should be this. And I've told, you know, those individuals, you know, what you need to do, though, is do your research. In other words, if you want to be a digital marketer and your parents are saying, be a lawyer because they can make a lot more money, but don't just go in and say, no, I'm going to be a digital marketer. Explain to them what a digital marketer does. Explain to them what are the possibilities of going down this pathway and what are the career trajectories. What about salaries? Explain to them that actually digital marketers make a lot of money. But then also, if I was to become a lawyer, that doesn't resonate, and here's why. If I become a digital marketer, here's why it does resonate. Here's why I can be so good at it. In other words, do your research and build it as a persuasive argument on why this is important to you, and hopefully they will garner the support then as a result. But find those champions and enablers.
I suppose as well, when you're building that case, you're also convincing yourself. You're finding the inner strength to make those decisions.
Absolutely.
You talked early on about that kind of a holistic view of life. Is there? I mean, we're all always kind of saying, you must find your passion, and that is your one thing. And people say, what are you? I'm a photographer, I'm a writer, I'm a doctor, whatever it is. But does your passion need to be your main thing? Can you have the job that pays well but is incredibly boring and kind of demoralizes you, but the thing you do outside of work is the thing that lifts you up, and that's where you can find your, it might be growing roses, it might be writing poetry, it could be whatever it is, but if you can make space for that, then it kind of balances out that kind of the drudgery with this kind of other wonderful thing.
Yeah, actually, and I love the word passion. I always say passion cannot be sustained. Passion is your igniter to purpose. Purpose is where we need to go. But passion is equally important because that's what ignites you. And, also, I would say if you're really miserable in where you are as a position, the challenge becomes anything and everything goes down that trajectory. So if a manager says something because it's drudgery or you don't like your job, you're going to look at it through a negative lens. A coworker says, "Oh, do you mind if, could you just look after this for 15 minutes because I got to dash out and do this?" You're going to look at it from a negative lens and say, "Well, they're always doing this," or in that way. It's difficult, but we need to have a mind shift. And that mind shift sometimes says, I may not really enjoy where I am, but what is it about that I do that I can pull some strands of things that may shine a bit of light on something that may be dim? And it's not easy to do because people, unfortunately, once they're in that pathway, they're going down that pathway. But once you start looking at it through a different lens, a different perspective, maybe that person who had to dash out for 15 minutes, maybe try to, and they say, "Could you do that?" And then, a conversation happens. "Is everything all right?" And they're like, "Well, actually, it's not." And you're like, "Oh," and then you start learning more about the people you work with. You learn more about that place where you are and reignite why you're there if you can. But equally at the same time, like you say, if you love to write poetry or you're gardening, try to bring that into that workspace to shine a bit of light into that, so that maybe your colleagues realize, "You know what, Chris, you're a poet. I didn't realize you're a poet." You're like, "Yeah, no, here's what I'm doing. And, I'm going to be speaking at this event. If anyone's interested, please come by." So there are ways to start seasoning and helping that place where you're not happy. But I think part of it is you need to look at yourself to say, am I also contributing to this negative energy that I'm putting out? And maybe there needs to be that shift. One thing I've always said as well is no matter how great of a person I may be, I can't change the weather. I can't change many of the circumstances around me. But what I can change is how I'm going to react to the situation. I dictate how I'm going to react to the situation, but I'm not going to let it pull me down into a negative zone. So I always look at it through the lens of, yeah, this didn't work out right, but what's the possibility? What are the things that I can pull from here that may help me as I move forward?
There are a lot of very kind of wise people have written over many hundreds and thousands of years about this kind of disconnect between our own perspective and the reality of a situation. I think Maya Angelou said, if you don't like a situation, change it. If you can't change it, change your attitude, and the Stoics certainly have said a lot of things along those lines. And you also spoke at the beginning about how your obstacle becomes your kind of direction. And that's another very Stoic philosophy. How much do we need to nurture this kind of self-awareness so that we can say, this thing that we're finding incredibly difficult, once we kind of accept that it's difficult and it's upsetting and we don't like it, it's actually a signpost for what we need to do next, and it's a kind of guiding light, if you like, to where we need to focus our energy. How can we kind of develop that self-awareness if we don't already have it?
Yeah, I mean, that was the first TEDx speech I did. Oftentimes we're in autopilot doing our job, family commitments, and our usual routines. And I came up with this TEDx talk that I called Discovering the Extraordinary in the Ordinary. In other words, our lives are ordinary, or so we think, but embedded in the ordinary are these tremendously extraordinary experiences. And, we just have to be open to it. And the way that I came up with this is this concept of what I call carpe. Carpe, as in carpe diem, seize the day, but carpe is what I do to shift that concept and idea to become more reflective. And the way I do that is carpe stands for curiosity, appreciation, reflection, perspectives, experience. Curiosity is going through life with your lens open, your radar open, and things may stop you. So again, break the routine, go a different way to work, or maybe talk to someone you haven't talked to. That's curiosity. That stops you. Appreciation is when you stop and something has stopped you, appreciate it for more than what it is. Reflection is where you add purpose and meaning to something that is even beyond. So what you'll find with reflection is you start adding purpose and meaning to it. Perspectives, we all have our own perspectives, but embedded in these perspectives are ways that we add more significance to our reflection. And experience is capturing this as a story or as an experience so it doesn't die an untimely death. And what I'll do is I'll give you an example of how, something simple can be ordinary, how we can change it and make it extraordinary. So what I do is I hold on to puzzle pieces. So I've got a single piece of a jigsaw puzzle. And I give this to an individual. And when I give a single piece of a jigsaw puzzle piece to an individual, I say, what can you do with one piece? And they always say, well, not much. It's a single piece. It's ordinary. And I'm like, absolutely, it's ordinary. But Chris, this is what people feel like. People feel like that single piece of a jigsaw puzzle. We don't know where we fit in. We don't know what the bigger picture is, but we go through life. But I shift that perspective because what I always say is, apart from this single piece, I hold a satchel in my hand. And in the satchel are puzzle pieces. If I give you a single piece of a jigsaw puzzle, do you realize my puzzle will now be permanently incomplete without you? Do you realize how important you are to my puzzle? And I suddenly see a transformation on their face because they suddenly realize you've just shifted it from ordinary to extraordinary. I've had people tell me it's taped to their mirror. It reminds them someone said that I matter. It's traveled in backpacks around the world. It's in wallets. And somebody showed me a picture the other day, actually two people separately. They said, yeah, you're, and they posted it. They said, your puzzle pieces, and they had it next to their wallet, still with me. And that's an example of how carpe works, curiosity. So when I did this puzzle analogy, curiosity stopped me. There's something more than just what this puzzle is, beyond what its obvious use is. So that's appreciation. Sorry, that's the curiosity that stopped me. I appreciated that puzzle piece for more than what it is. And I started reflecting and adding purpose and meaning to it. And I brought my perspectives in on connectedness and togetherness and stories, and it added more significance to it, but I captured it as an experience so that I still give these out. It's been about 5,000 to date to remind people how important they are. But that's an example.
It's wonderful, actually. I one of my favorite conversations I've had on the podcast is with Martha Beck. I don't know if you know Martha Beck or you've read any of her books or anything, but she's a academic, also a coach and a mentor. But she talks about how we can define value in life and create importance using our own kind of sense of will, really. And you can take anything, and once you start to add meaning and value, and whatever it is, suddenly that very ordinary thing becomes really, really valuable.
Mm-hmm.
And also, but I think the jigsaw is a really unique idea because,
Mm-hmm.
like you say, once you take that piece away, the rest of the jigsaw essentially becomes worthless without that one piece. And all of those pieces add real value. We all have a part to play in this kind of great organism that is kind of life and existence and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do we?
And I was just going to add to that
Yeah.
is the fact that no one puzzle piece is more important than another piece. Every single piece has a significance in that puzzle that you hold.
As a puzzle piece, how do we find our place in the greater puzzle? Is that where the curiosity comes in?
Yeah. Yeah. And just the fact that that you are connected to others who, you may not even realize that these individuals that you're surrounded by, whether it's in the workplace, whether it was schoolmates, your social network, all of this makes up this giant puzzle, and you're in it. But it's all components of those experiences and stories.
It makes me think a little bit of the Japanese unanswerable questions. The sound of one hand clapping and that sort of thing. We're going through life, and you said early on about how this thing you're doing now doesn't have to be the thing you're doing in 5 years' time. You can change your mind, you can change what's important to you. And I heard a great metaphor, about when they fired the Apollo moon landings. The first men to walk on the moon. They kind of knew roughly where the moon was, but they didn't have a roadmap to the moon. But they kind of aimed the rocket and they fired it. But then the whole way there, it was course corrections all the way along, and at any time they could have, turned the thing around and come home, and someone used that as a metaphor for life. And I think there's a similarity here. We're a puzzle piece, and maybe our job is not to know exactly where we're going, but to keep experimenting and trying and, finding different things that work for us until we start to find out where we fit into the bigger picture.
Yeah. And the challenge though is, especially when I work with younger people, who are in university and young professionals, they want to solve their life puzzle. And I'm there saying, actually, you can't solve your life puzzle. And the way I describe it as another analogy is, if I dropped a 5,000 piece jigsaw puzzle on your table and I left with the cover, what are you building? The cover is your completed life. The puzzle is your life. And what many of these individuals obviously would love to do is throw 5,000 pieces way up in the air. And when it lands, they hope it bounces into place and their life is before them. But we know puzzles don't work like that. You're going to have to build it piece by piece, section by section. And maybe what they do is, so I've got the box cover, they've got the 5,000 pieces, and that's their life. You then sift through it. Maybe you find pieces of a chimney door and a window. Maybe there's a house. So you start pulling pieces that look like a house, and you start building this house here on the side. Well, while you're halfway through building the house, you turn a piece over and you're like, oh, wait, I think this is part of the mast of a ship. And now you start seeing parts of a ship. The house isn't done. Now you start building a ship. Halfway through building the ship, you start finding pieces of a car. The house isn't done. The ship's not done. And now you're building a car. This is what our life is like. It's in segments and sections. There's no semblance of order. And I always tell people that rather than trying to solve your life puzzle, try to find those singular pieces. The singular pieces are those people, experiences, and stories. I mean, if we've ever built a jigsaw puzzle, you have two sections that aren't complete, but you suddenly find that one piece that connects the two sections together. Rather than trying to go through life trying to solve your life puzzle, go through life trying to find those connecting pieces, the things that add significance to you, the stories, the experiences, the coaches, the people around you, because that's going to help to make sense of what you're building as a life.
I think that's wonderful, because as well, no one gets to see the finished puzzle until right at the very end, and there's no way that it can be anything but finished, complete, until you get right to the very end. So why not just explore this section of the puzzle, then explore that section of the puzzle, bring it all together like a kind of giant mosaic of broken pieces that you don't know what it is until you start to put them together. And that's up to you to what that's going to be. So just to finish off, you talked about how you want to show the world how to care. And you've talked about collaboration, adaptability, resilience, and empathy. So why are these kind of core themes so important to you?
Well, I think the pandemic's obviously hit every single person, and it's impacted not just individuals, it's impacted teams and organizations, educational institutions, nonprofits. And I remember sitting there saying, again, how can I control this situation that is presented before me that we can't control? And I came up with these 4 words that are really important to me, but I also realized they've been important to other people because I've shared it. There is a need for us to care right now, and CARE stands for collaboration, adaptability, resilience, and empathy. Collaboration means we all have something to share. We all have something to contribute, and bringing them together makes us stronger. So we should be collaborating more. Adaptability means let's not resist change. Everybody has been impacted, and we've all had to become adaptable to it. Maybe take this adaptability mindset further to say, it's not so scary because I've had to do this. I was forced into it, but adaptability is where I've grown as an individual. Resilience means this is a marathon. It's not over today or tomorrow. This is not a 100-meter dash. Let's run this like a marathon. Let's build this resilience in, knowing that as a marathon, there's going to be some difficult places, but then there's also those smoother sailing places. So let's build this resilience in to help us through those difficult times, but equally to help us, during those times that we can celebrate. And empathy is showing more care and compassion to each other, because we don't know what people are going through and how it's impacting them. So let's show more empathy and build that into our lives so that we are collaborating, being adaptable, being more resilient, and being more empathetic to people. I think that will help us emerge out of this pandemic even stronger if we embrace these.
Yeah, there is a danger, isn't there? Especially at the moment when people are very tired. There is a danger of kind of things boiling over and people losing their patience.
Yep.
With everyone is in need of a little bit of kindness, a little bit of empathy and understanding, and perhaps that's where more of us can find our place to fit in as those kind of jigsaw pieces, just to be a little bit kinder in our day-to-day life. But
of course.
But that's been a brilliant conversation. I'm really grateful for your time and your insight, and so much of that has resonated with me, especially on the journey that I've been on. Yeah. If people want to find out more about you and kind of learn more about the kind of work you're doing and kind of take this further, where can they find you?
Well, you can always drop by my website. I've got about 180 blog posts there, and they're all accessible for anybody to read about these life experiences. And the website is www.sam-thiara.com, and Thiara is Thiara. You can also find me on Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn, and you can always reach out there as well. So that's not a problem. But that's, making myself accessible and available, but hopefully there's some insights there for people.
Fantastic. Well, I will say goodbye now for the sake of the podcast, but if you can hang on just for 1 minute afterwards, that'd be great. But thank you for that. I am so grateful, and there's a lot to take away from that, so I'm going to go away and digest some of this now. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Chris, well, I appreciate it, and what I leave with your audience is, everyone's life is an autobiography. Make yours worth reading. We are all living stories. We all have significance. Share your story and your brilliance.
That's a great way to end. So thank you so much for that. So there we are, a wonderful and inspiring conversation with Sam Thiara. You can find out more about him, like I said, at his website. That's sam-thiara.com, and that link will be in the show notes. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts or on the main website at conversationsonliving.com. Like I said at the beginning, don't forget to sign up to my newsletter, subscribe, rate, review, tell your friends, tell the world about Conversations on Living. We have a message here, and that is about taking ownership of life, being well, doing well, and living well. And so head over to the website and just have a browse, see what other conversations you want to check out some of my writings and that kind of thing. And in the meantime, have a wonderful day.